Everybody, I'm Gwen Campbell-Mindes. Welcome to Gwen's Bookish Ramblings, and hey, we're back to Lindsey Davis's Didius Falco series, and in this one, we take a sudden dramatic shift of genre because, as per Lindsey Davis's author's notes, apparently it turns out that informers were not merely gumshoes. They didn't merely do investigations. Informers were apparently, in effect, ambulance chaser lawyers. That you had proper Roman lawyers. Goodness knows the Romans had a legal system, a complex, ridiculous, over-the-top, just as ours is, legal system, with, portions of it that we would probably today find appalling, but other portions of it that we today would look at and say, yeah, that's appalling, but that's what legal systems are like. But they also, informers apparently also acted as lawyers. And so what happens in this case is Didius Falco gets involved with informers of the kind that give informers a bad name. That our two opposing lawyers, who I just finished reading this book and I can't remember their names, as one does. But the thing is that you have these two opposing informers, and they are both of noble family. They are both, they're both upper class. They're both members of the Senate class of people in Rome. And so they're the kind of people who get the better, extremely expensive class of customers, so to speak. They had both been consuls, they had both, done various things, but the fact is that when we get, it becomes obvious very early on, though it isn't until the end of the book exactly how far it stretches, that these two informers who make up a significant portion of the opposition, in terms of that, there it is, Pacius Africanus and Silius Italicus. Those two, they're working together, and it's clear very, very early on, if only because you watch as they almost trade off who their clients are, that you see them buddying together at various points when they shouldn't have gotten together, that they're supposed to be at odds. And it's very, very clear that they are working this whole situation together. And the situation is that you have a man who gets caught on corruption charges. And then it was standard practice in Rome for certain people to be advised to commit suicide because an honorable suicide could preserve their estate, it could keep people from being able to go after their estate for money, and so on and so forth. And so you have the paterfamilias of the Metelli, who are, I suppose you could call it the clients, the subjects of this whole complex investigation in the book, that the father dies and it's passed off as suicide so that it gets him out of his, so that it gets him out of his debts, but then the other lawyer goes in, but then, there's an accusation that he wasn't, that he did not in fact commit suicide, that he was murdered, and so then this goes after another member of the family who then gets declared innocent, and it's this whole pinwheeling, expanding, spiraling mess of suing and countersuing that is clearly being masterminded and handled by Africanus and Italicus. And like I said, it's a much, much bigger thing that isn't made entirely clear until you get to the very end of the book. But one of the other really, really interesting things in this, of course, is that you have this family, and they have some very serious, deep secrets, things that they can't tell people because their social standing, their place, their everything rests on people not finding out these truths. And the difficulty, and the thing is that you need to remember always that this is ancient Rome. That finding out that someone's accepted son is not actually his son is in fact just a replacement baby that was swapped in by a nurse, by a wet nurse, like all of this stuff, that means something in ancient Rome in a way that it would not in this modern era in the West. I mean, there would certainly be people who were appalled along the way about various aspects of it, but it's something that, as they say at the end of the book, that it can't be resolved by adoption because you don't know who he actually is, so you can't actually know who you're adopting because that makes a difference in Rome, in ancient Rome. But they've got all of these secrets that are sort of stacked up and built up around each other, and they can't tell anybody about it. But half of this book is watching Falco's investigation, his efforts, his everything be entirely hamstrung by this family who will not actually tell him the truth, who will not explain what's going on, and I suspect, in a way, that their blank refusal to tell anybody is part of the reason why everything went so poorly, because they wouldn't trust anyone with this. I mean, you have to keep in mind, again, one of the reasons we have rules about lawyer-client-patient confidentiality. Lawyers have very, very powerful confidentiality rules, very specifically because it's very, very hard to form a defense, to form a court case, if weird family secrets can come lunging out at you from nowhere, if weird, strange things that you didn't know about can come lunging out at you from nowhere. And people have things they don't want to say. They don't want they don't want people to know about the affairs that they had. They don't want people to know about this raw business deal that happened. There's a whole bunch of things that they don't want people to know about. And by having this law that makes it virtually impossible for a lawyer to say anything that their client tells them when it is stated under the umbrella of client confidentiality, is that it makes it safe for people to tell a lawyer just about anything so that the lawyer can build a case properly, so the lawyer can say, yes, this is a thing, this is the story that we're telling people, this is what happened, and because they know all of these little details, they can account for things, they can figure out ways to work around people who maybe have an alibi, but the alibi was I was cheating on my husband. The thing about these informers is you don't have that. People already don't trust informers, as as Didius Falco says in a lengthy speech in the middle of this book. People don't trust informers because informers, while there are certainly good people who are out there to do the right thing and, prosecute the evil and, save the good and find murderers and so on and so forth. But there are also people who are the worst kind of ambulance chaser lawyer, who are the worst kind of investigator, who are the worst kind of bully boy who don't care about any of that. They can't trust Falco with any of what's actually going on. And so he spends this entire book desperately trying to reconstruct what's happening with no one willing to explain why they're doing anything. And in the end, they wind up starting a court case against an innocent woman who they find out far too late is innocent. And far too late, not merely because of what happens to her, that she commits suicide to avoid the trouble before they could say we withdrew our charges, but also because they carried their charges so far that they wind up in serious fiscal trouble because of it. And I say they because Falco now has two junior sidekick members of his little firm, that is his common-law wife Helena's two brothers. Their parents are apparently long-sufferingly putting up with their noble daughter and two noble sons having decided they're going to spend all of their time hanging around a low-class gumshoe informer guy. However much Helena's father does in fact actually like him. But the thing is that they work themselves into a very unfortunate position, and it is nearly all due to the Metellai's complete refusal to actually explain what was going on, to actually say, to make it possible for them to figure out a thing they could actually do. The real murderer is found, but the real murderer turns out to have died right before they figured out that she was the murderer, so that's no good. And, you know, like, this whole book it's a legal drama. And it's a legal drama populated by people who are unrepentantly and endlessly lying. And however good their reasons may be for lying, it feels to me like it's one of those things where they lied so much that they wound up shooting themselves in the foot because they lied to the one person that they didn't actually need to lie to. But anyhow, so we have this completely unexpected turn, because I've said before, you know, a lot of the time we get hard-bitten private investigator stuff, and sometimes we get, you know, high-octane spy political drama stuff, and now this has become a legal drama. It's such an interesting series from a genre perspective. The historical fiction part remains consistent, but the side genre of it just bounces all over the place, and it is really, really interesting. And I think the variety is part of what makes these books so great, is that you get a little bit of basically everything. So, yeah, I'm at 13 minutes, and while I could probably come up with other things to say off the cuff, I think I'm going to leave this rather than running right up to the edge of my time. So, yeah, this one was interesting and unexpected, and, you know, like the others, I recommend it. It's a good time. But, probably more for those who want a legal drama than for those who, you know, want hard-bitten gumshoe pounding the pavement in doing, you know, hardcore criminal investigations, because this is a legal drama. Yeah, so I think that's everything, and I will see you all next week.